So Batman Arkham Trilogy is out now for the Nintendo Switch, and we need to talk about Arkham Knight because, as you've probably read online or experienced firsthand, this is a less than stellar port with low resolution textures and, more importantly, significant performance issues. Now, the game itself starts off pretty well and gives you the impression that it's running okay on the Switch, especially in handheld mode on an OLED model, which appears to be a solid port. However, you quickly start to realize that performance issues and problems start to occur when you experience the same issues that people have been discussing online, and that includes frame rate drops, stutters, and horrible frame pacing issues. So what exactly went wrong here, and can we salvage the game with a little bit of overclocking on the Switch? Well, let's go ahead and find out.
In Gotham.
I won't let that happen, Jim. In case you need to reach me, it's going to be a long night.
Arkham Knight proves that Unreal Engine 3 was never really the right fit for the Switch unless there were significant rewrites of various systems, and unfortunately Arkham Knight doesn't appear to have any of those. It simply pushes the limit of the Switch much too hard. Now, when we run the game, you'll notice that the frame rate is targeting 30 FPS, but it never sustains a locked 30 FPS unless there is really not much else going on the screen at the same time. And the most egregious part of this obviously has to do with the driving sequences, where I've seen drops as low as 18 frames per second in my playthrough, but other people have experienced even worse than this. I personally have not seen that, but 18 frames per second is obviously nothing that is acceptable, and it's probably something that I would not consider playable. Now, again, other people have gotten worse than this, but the result overall is a very choppy experience that makes the driving sequences difficult and even impossible in some areas. The combat sequences that rely on combos and chains and timing to, basically dispatch all your enemies without getting hit. And again, it's ruined by this experience, and this is the part of the game where a lot of people feel that it is completely unplayable. But I do want to go back to the driving sequences because that is really the main issue here. So what exactly is going on? Well, what do I think is going on with this particular port, Arkham Knight, on the Switch? Well, as mentioned, Arkham Knight is one of the most advanced UE3 games going around, and there are many different systems running. In fact, if you just take a look at this one particular scene here, you'll notice that there is advanced lighting. There are lots of particles, there's rain effects, and of course there are physics, and obviously the world, the draw distance, and the geometry in this game. There's the texturing, but all of these systems that run in the game make up the fabric of what Arkham Knight is, and they all play a very important part of the entire game. Now, during the driving sequences, many buildings and objects are destructible, which really brings out the superhero feeling in the game, that you're like this badass superhero. But unfortunately, the complex physics in the game is one of the main factors of the performance issues, and it makes it very difficult just to kind of reduce those things on the Switch in order to get a good experience. Now, these driving sequences, as we know, don't run very well, and I believe the reason why is simply because the game's streaming system simply cannot keep up. And I believe, well, I can't be 100% certain, it seems like it's pausing to bring in geometry, asset data, and world data into the Switch memory via the Switch storage, or from the Switch storage. And the poor Switch simply cannot keep up with the demands of everything that's being thrown at it, at least with these stock settings. So then, let's go ahead and take a look at overclocking this game with a modded Switch, because we do have the option to do that with my system here. So with my overclock Switch here, we are running a very aggressive overclock, as you can see here, and we're also running an uncapped frame rate. And the reason that this can be done is thanks to the very excellent FPS Locker homebrew tool that has been developed by Massagrator, who we've talked about on this channel before. And you can see that we can now target 60 frames per second. Now, you might be wondering, well, how can we even hit 60 when we can barely hit 30 on this game? Well, with overclocking and an uncapped frame rate, we can see indeed that we can push the performance of this game much higher than what we originally thought in some sequences. In fact, when we run through the introduction sequence and the first mission of the game, it almost holds 60 FPS all the time. Of course, there are frame drops, and I'm certainly not trying to say that it's a locked 60 FPS, but it does look a lot smoother, and that is a pretty positive thing. But what you'll notice is that the frame pacing is all over the place. It never smooths out. It's never a smooth line. It's always very, very jumpy. And that is definitely a giveaway that there is a lot going on underneath the hood. The physics systems, as mentioned, the texture streaming system is mentioned. All these things are running in conjunction, and it's really hurting the frame rate. And of course, that is just my assumptions and my guesswork. But as someone who is familiar with this stuff, I'm pretty confident that that's what this is. Now, what's interesting about this, even though we can get the game and push it to up to 60 FPS, which is very, very encouraging, especially when we talk about, potentially patching the game later on, for a sustained 30 FPS experience on a stock Switch, unfortunately, the driving sequence lets everything down again. As you can see, the frame rate does completely tank. Now, it doesn't tank to the areas where we were seeing on a stock Switch, but we're seeing drops into the 30s and even into the low 20s. And this kind of spread of frame rate going from about 20 frames per second to 60 is simply unheard of. And obviously there is something else that's causing this. Another really interesting thing that I noticed with the game when you're driving around in the Batmobile with an uncapped frame rate with an overclock, it seems like every second there is a slight judder that's happening. It's very, very noticeable once you see it, and it's very distracting when you have seen it because you kind of can't unsee it after that. Now, my initial thoughts about overclocking before I even started doing it was I felt like the performance would get smoothed out. Now, I wouldn't suggest that it was going to get completely smoothed out, but I did have a suspicion or a thought that maybe, with an aggressive overclock, we would actually be able to just have a smooth line at 30 FPS. And even in this scenario, when we do cap the frame rate back to 30 FPS, we're not experiencing a smooth line, which means we're still getting those frame timing issues, those frame pacing issues. And unfortunately, this game needs a lot of help. And obviously, the developers really have to think about how they're going to address this in an up-and-coming patch. And this goes back to, I guess, the the work they're doing with WB and potentially how much more time and effort they are willing to put into this game. But I think that there is a part of Arkham Knight that is simply unsalvageable. Now, while at this juncture, I do think that the game itself is not running very well, and I think most people would agree with that, I do believe that there is room for a patch that can address some of these issues. But I would also be very cautious and say that I'm not sure how much more it can be improved. I think there has to be some significant optimizations, and we're talking potentially months and months of work. Unfortunately, even though the Switch we know can run what we call the impossible port, games like Doom Eternal and The Witcher, those games were optimized, those games had a lot of money thrown at them, and this particular game, the Arkham Trilogy, or the Arkham Knight game, doesn't seem like it's had the same level of attention. And I think when it comes to bringing Unreal Engine 3 games to the Nintendo Switch, you have to be very careful about how you approach the port. And I think the easiest option is to just start reducing things and start removing things so the game can start to run at a good level of performance. But once you've expired all those options, then you really have to take the next step. And that next step is a significant overhaul of various systems to get the game running the way you want it to. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's something that we'll ever see. I am hopeful that this game will get patched, and I'm definitely hopeful that the driving sequence stutter can be addressed. I feel like at least, if not anything, the stuttering here can be fixed, but we'll just have to wait and see. But overall, Arkham Knight on the Nintendo Switch, while it is of an interest, it's certainly not anything that I would recommend to anyone at this time. I think the Arkham Trilogy itself is probably something that you want to pick up during a sale. And honestly, I think that WB probably should have just released the first two games as a double pack, and that would have been a lot better. But Arkham Knight on the Switch, it's an interesting game, and we'll have to see if it actually gets patched. But thanks to an overclock switch, we can actually hit 60 FPS, but unfortunately, it doesn't really seem to make too much of a difference in the grand scheme of things because of the driving sequences really just bring the gameplay experience down. And it doesn't really matter if we're running a Switch 2 at this point. It seems like there are underlying issues that just have to be fixed here. But we are going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Arkham Knight on the Nintendo Switch. Do you guys have the game? Are you playing it? I definitely want to hear your experiences and your thoughts in the comments below. But we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.